Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners in Latin America, also across the pond, in London, England, as well as Paris, France. And of course, you good old boys from Africa, you know we love the Big C tribe. We love you in Canada, but there's still no one we love more than the good old boys down south in the land of the free and the home of the brave on a beautiful May the 15th, 2018, in the land of the free and the home of the brave. This is Charlton and Big C Sports. Big C is actually, I think Big C is still trying to find that vibranium that I was telling about. I found it in the Bible, and a lot of good old boys around the world of sports, they've been looking forward to it. In fact, when you think about it, all the great things happening right now in the world of the sports universe, the Cleveland Cavaliers, they're tipped off and underway against the Boston Celtics. In that series, a lot of people are looking forward to it. Does LeBron James have what it takes to bring them back? I know tonight's Boston's favorite by 1 point. The over-under is 203. And that's a lot of points for teams that don't pass the ball a lot. We know last game, Cleveland really did not perform well. Major League Baseball, we talk about who are the top teams in the world of Major League Baseball, and we'll get into some of that. As well as NHL. You gotta love what's happening in the NHL. And in fact, tonight's game, Washington is favored over Tampa. We have the beautiful team from Canada, Winnipeg. They're actually tied with Las Vegas. That series is now tied at 1 apiece. And we love so much that's happening in the world of the sports universe. We often just got through the golf championship, and Tiger Woods did his thing, although Simpson won it. But so many people are talking about the sports universe and what happened last night in Houston. We saw two of the best teams in all of the NBA, and these are the teams that have been building up to have a fantastic season. All year long, we've talked about Houston getting the #1 seed. Remember, it was just after the Christmas break, at the All-Star break, that Houston took over the #1 seed from Golden State. Golden State has been such a dominant basketball team. This is the first time in about 4 seasons that they have not gone into the NBA playoffs as the #1 seed. So a lot of excitement around what happened in that series. But also, it was also just much ado about nothing when you look at Golden State and how successful they've been. I do want to say this segment sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. And when you go by and test drive yours, tell them Charlton and Big C sent you. You can drive a car, or you can drive a Cadillac. One thing I want to say in the world of sports, everybody that was saying this series that you have with Golden State and Houston, I want everyone to just think about what we saw last night. We see it all the time in sports. When you have the home court advantage or the home field advantage, it doesn't really matter if you're the road team, because you go in there, there's no pressure, there's no hometown cooking where the fans are asking you, can they get a ticket to the game? Can you get me in? Can a brother spare a ticket? We know how that goes. Well, a lot of people want to say, can you get me some tickets to the games? The athletes have to buy their tickets to the games. But when we look at what happened last night in Houston, not only did you see Harden is a phenomenal basketball player. I mean, no one can say that he's not one of the best basketball players in the universe. He definitely can bring it over 40 points in that game. It seems to be something that he does just routinely. But when you think about what happened in the first period, Houston was up double digits over Golden State. The crowd was amazing. Golden State seemed like they were a little bit rattled. And that can happen when you're the road team and you're on the road and you're playing the #1 seed in their own backyard. So I wanted people to look at the contrast. We talked about Capella. We talked about what happens with Harden and Chris Paul. And I'll tell you what happened with them. They haven't seen a defense that can come in and shut you down the way Golden State did last night. I know everybody talks about, can Harden get to a championship? And I think the answer to that question is emphatically no. Not this year. Unless there's a complete turnaround in playing the way they were playing that game last night. I think when we look at what happened with Gordon, they said, would Gordon be the difference maker? And Houston tasted some diversity. Gordon really didn't have a good game. Thought Capella played very well. Harden played out of his mind. Then Chris Paul, I think he showed us what he is. He got into some words with Durant. And at some point in time, you got to wonder, what are the words that he's getting into Durant for? Because Durant obviously is a lot bigger player. Durant scores more points. It's not as if Paul can intimidate him. And we saw a lot of that happen. We'll get Big C on in a little bit here. We saw a lot of what happened when you had Paul, jabbing with Durant. What's the reason? He's not as tall. He may be quicker, but he doesn't shoot better. He doesn't have a higher scoring percentage. He's not better at the free throw line. He's not better defensively. So what is Paul doing trying to get in the head of a guy that's about a foot taller than him? And it doesn't make any sense. So when you have a 10-point lead in the first period, and then you have Golden State, which has done everything we thought they would do. They played team basketball, and they had a double-digit lead. I'm kind of feeling bad, Big C. I did not listen to my friend from Las Vegas that said, Curry, you got to listen to him. He was blowing up my phone, Big C. I know Big C's chiming in. I don't know if you were sipping on the moonshine, Big C, or if you were actually getting your bookie on the phone for game 2 tonight between Cleveland and Boston, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Chuck, it's wonderful. You don't even have to call Vegas anymore. Now that the Supreme Court has let everybody in on that piece of the pie. Matter of fact, I can imagine Charles Barkley being late for a few shows now. As much as he likes to, put out a wager here and there. But it's amazing when you look at this series out there in the West.
Yeah.
Is it over? It's easy to ask that question.
Yeah.
Is it over?
I don't think so.
Because, well, you got to look at how Houston let that get away.
Yeah.
They seem lackluster at times, Shelton. You have a big lead and you go complacent. When you have a big lead in the playoffs, Shelton, you don't slow down. You didn't see Boston slow down the other night against, Cleveland.
Yeah.
They kept running on. They got up by 29 points. They didn't slow down at all. But here it is. You get Houston with this double-digit lead, and they back out of their game plan.
Yeah.
At that point, you start going to the basket. That's what you do. Take some time off the clock. Get to the free throw line.
Yeah.
They didn't do that. The team, you could see the sluggishness in them at times. It's like when Golden State would put on a run, it would be like, oh, gosh, what's happening?
Yep.
You can see that worriness, and a lot of athletes have experienced that, Charlton, over time. But this is a team that has had the Warriors in the forefront of their mind, not the back of their mind, in the forefront of their mind all year long. They fought to get the home court advantage throughout the playoffs. But that home court advantage now technically has been obliterated. The Warriors have come in, now they're playing with house money.
Yeah.
They're playing loose. And when you talk about Kevin Durant, Charlton, I don't care who the opposing player is. We saw it last year in the championship series with Cleveland.
Yeah.
Even LeBron could not hold down Kevin Durant.
No.
This is a freak of nature when you talk about basketball. Being 6'11", you have a wingspan that exceeds that by another 6 inches, Charlton.
Yeah.
You have a great handle on the basketball. You can shoot over anybody. I'm talking about jump shots. You don't need to back them to the basket.
No.
You can face them up and rise up over them. So his ability on the court, Charlton, and we talked about it in our previous show, is unmatched.
Yeah.
They don't have anybody, whether you're looking at Ariza or Capella, which defensively are the best two players that they have that can match up with him. They can't keep up with him.
No.
Capella, you got him too far from the basket. Ariza's not tall enough, Charlton. So they have a complete mismatch.
Yeah.
And if you're demanding that Paul and Harden go out and get the bulk of your points, which they've done all season long, Charlton, but you got to depend on other players when it comes to the playoffs.
Yeah.
And that's what Houston just didn't do. Everybody was looking for Harden and Paul, and all of a sudden, Golden State snuck out with a win.
Yeah, and in fact, sneaking out is what, sometime when you're a teenager and your parents tell you don't sneak out of the room, and they tell you no sneaking out of the house when they sleep, especially for you guys down south that do all that shining, thinking all that shining to relax the nerves, Big C. And I think, you've been talking about Big C, go fund Big C, and we're trying to get people to fund, go fund Big C. We're looking for $3 billion, okay? So we're looking, is it $3 billion or $300 billion? Which one was it, Big C, $3 billion, I think?
Well, as long as we can get a billionaire, we're good.
Okay, I'm coming up just watching these games and how fantastic it is. I think I'm working on a theme song. You know how sometimes everybody's trying to say, how do you make the game better? At the end of the season, when a team wins a championship, they usually sing a song about, I'm going to Disneyland. Well, I've come up with a new song, and I know a lot of people have been wondering about it. It says, when you wish upon a star, makes no difference who you are. Anything your heart desires will come to you. We all know that as being Disneyland, right, Big C? Well, I think I've improved it, and I think Golden State improved it last night. It's called When You Wish Upon a Star, makes no difference who you are. The vibranium your heart desires will come to you. Now, I told you, and I know you good old boys down south, you don't believe in vibranium, but it's one of the rare substances. It's not only rare on Earth, it's rare in the universe. And it seems like Kevin Durant found it last night. He's a lion. He was out to pray, and he got what he wanted. He didn't ask. He took it, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, he's such a dominant player. We saw that last year when he was the MVP in the playoffs.
Yeah.
And, we've seen that throughout this playoff run in the West thus far this year, Charlton. Everyone was concerned about Steph Curry. Would he come back? Now, he missed the first 2 games of the playoffs, Charlton, and he came back and it showed that he really didn't miss a beat. But, this is a team that's led by Kevin Durant.
Yeah.
And, he was deferred to by the rest of the Golden State Warriors who had already won a championship, Charlton.
Yeah.
So they gave him his opportunity to be in that leadership role. And he has not let down at all, Charlton. You think about the dominance of this individual. Is that, he hasn't been in the MVP talk in a few years in the NBA, Charlton. But what you want is an MVP in the playoffs.
Yes.
That's where you really want your MVP to be. I mean, because when you look, and really probably the next 2 MVPs in the NBA won't win an NBA title.
Isn't that something?
But, you think about Steph Curry won back-to-back MVPs. He won a title in that run. Also picked it up with another last year. Kevin Durant, with the way that he has played, right now they seem to be on target, Charlton, to repeat this year as the NBA title.
Yeah.
But, Kevin Durant, is unflappable. You look at him, and you don't see emotion or anything. You see a guy that's going to work.
Yeah.
Who is looking at his craft is like, this is what I'm paid to do.
Yep.
I'm paid to be a dominant basketball player. I'm not paid to be a showboater. I'm not paid to go out and have antics. I'm paid to outscore you.
Yeah.
That's what he's doing, Charlton.
Well, he's not only outscoring, and this is when people can vote for the MVP. If the MVP is about, I'm not going to pass the ball to my teammates, I'm going to shoot all the shots, I'm going to hold the ball until there's about 8 seconds left on the shot clock, and when it's down to about 3 seconds left on the shot clock, if I can't get off a shot, I'm going to pass it to one of my teammates and hope they get a shot off, messing up their percentage. Now, I just bring it up because we saw 2 things. We saw 2 styles of basketball last night. You know how we talked about going to Disneyland. Disneyland or Disney World, they all want to go there because it truly is the happiest place on earth. But when you look at players, and this is for you aficionados and guys that go back in history, name me the MVP that held the possession and had his players standing around. The 24-second shot clock is running. As soon as you get it, it's running. You get the ball for about 19 of those 24 seconds. How do you get the other guys involved? Because Houston's actually a good team, and they're actually better when Harden's scoring around 30, not 40. And they haven't realized that yet because they're trying to get him to win the MVP before they win an NBA championship. Big C, would that make any sense at all? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, but this is how this team has been set up. You think about D'Antoni when he coached the Phoenix Suns, and you had Steve Nash averaging 14, 15 assists a game, Charlton, throughout his tenure there. This is a situation where you don't have that one dominant point guard. You got 2 point guards, so you're deferring. And the rest of the players have deferred to the point guards where they sit back and watch, a la OKC.
Yeah.
When Westbrook has the ball in his hand, you don't know if you're going to get a pass, even though he has a phenomenal number of assists.
Yes.
But you never know when you're going to get the ball.
Yeah.
So, this is the thing that Harden, because of his shooting style, is that you don't know if he's going to kick the ball out to you now. The way he shoots with this flapping three-point shot that he has when he goes to the basket, it's an unorthodox toss-up that he has, almost like a reverse finger roll.
Yeah.
But, this is a team that has been lulled to sleep by their point guards. When you're trying to cross over people, we had talked about the Philadelphia series, how they have all these non-American-born players.
Yeah.
Who were taught basketball without basketball in the hand. Anybody can go back to the movie Blue Chip.
Yep.
Not Blue Chip, excuse me. The one with Gene Hackman in, where it's the Hickory High School.
Yeah.
And this is where everybody wanted to know, why don't we have the basketball? It's because you learn to play the game without the ball in your hand, so you don't need a basketball.
Yes.
And Hoosiers was the movie.
Hoosiers, yeah.
So he had everybody out, Charlton, working moves without the basketball.
Yeah.
And he said that's what happens 95% of the game. You don't have the basketball in your hand. So you need to learn how to play the game without the basketball. In the NBA, as we see it now with players, Charlton, when you don't have the basketball, 95% of the time you're watching.
Yeah.
You're not trying to get into position. You're watching. And so that's what we're seeing right now. We saw in this first game with Houston, is that you saw players watching, waiting on things to occur, and if something broke, then maybe they would make a move. But they can't play like that in Game 2, Charlton, and not expect to go down 0-2.
Well, I think you're right, and I know NBA basketball, if you don't like NBA basketball, then pay closer attention, because when young kids following AAU basketball out here in California, a lot of high school kids are in the AAU basketball all over the country. They love it, and they teach fundamentals. And we know the NBA is about stars. Stars sell tickets, supposedly, but winning sells tickets too. You can win without having a lot of stars, and people pay attention. But I want to get your thoughts again, and it goes back to who really is the MVP. Is the MVP the guy with the most points, or is the MVP the guy that does whatever it takes? He'll change things. He turns his game around to help his team win. And as much as we love what Harden does, the guy can shoot the lights. I mean, he can shoot with his eyes closed and make baskets. But a blaring deficiency that even some teenage boys were pointing out, and you talked about it many times, not just in the game last night, Big C, who's on his team? We talked about Lions. Lions go out to hunt, and Lions, they know who's on their team. That they feed their cubs. And when you look at Houston, we talk about Capella and Paul and Ariza, but who's on your team? And with Gordon, they don't get a chance to get warmed up. And when they get the ball, they have about 3 to 5 seconds to make something happen. But Harden, he's hurting his team because he doesn't know how to pass it. And I know Westbrook took a lot of that same criticism. So did Kobe Bryant back in the day. Do you think D'Antoni will say, I know that's how we won all year, but this defense that we're playing in Golden State, they're a different beat of cat? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, what happens when you get to the playoffs is that you're playing a great team every night. Well, when you look at a lot of teams in your division, they're not even 500 basketball teams, Charlton.
No.
But when you're in the playoffs, you have a team with a winning record, especially when you get to the conference finals. You're playing the second best team in the NBA right now. So, when you look at that, and this is a team that has that championship banner hanging behind them.
Yeah.
The road goes through them.
Yeah.
They know what it takes, like, Charlton, to hoist that champagne.
Yeah.
But they're also not going to give up the title that easily. And so when you come in to playing these guys in a series, you have to hanker down. You can't sit there and say, okay, during the regular season, we were able to dominate our opponents like this.
Yeah.
And I think so many proponents, Charlton, looked at it, well, they beat them 2 out of 3 times during the regular season. Yes, they did. But as we've seen many other times before, the Golden State Warriors lost close to 20 games during the regular season.
Yeah.
How many of those teams that beat them are playing now?
That's a good point.
That's what you have to look at. How many of those teams that the Golden State Warriors lost to in the regular season are playing right now in the NBA in the Final Four?
That's a good point.
That's what's most important. So don't sit there and think what a team did during the regular season against the former champs or the current champs. Saying, well, they had all these losses in the regular season. Yeah, but those teams that beat them are on vacation and watching on television like everyone else, Charles.
Yeah, they watch.
What's important is what can you do against a team when they're playing at this point of the season?
Yeah.
And they were nice that Golden State seemed like Weston didn't want to play. I know we had talked about the last loss they had of the season where they lost by, 40 points to Utah?
Yeah, that's horrible.
Because they didn't want to play Utah. They had a tough time during the regular season with Utah.
Yeah.
So they guaranteed themselves not to have that run, and we saw how Utah pushed Houston in the playoffs.
Yep.
Now, you got to think that as hard as they pushed them, even though it was only 5 games, Charlton, that left a little bit of leg fatigue in Houston.
Yeah.
As hard as they pushed them. So those are the things that you have to look at. They wanted Utah to wear down Houston, not that to get worn down by Utah.
Yeah.
So that you can see remnants of that in the first game of this series.
Yeah. I tell you what, Big C, there's something else that I learned about watching the game last night. We talked about it before, and you've seen a lot more sports than I have. But that home cooking where it's all emotion, it's kind of like a relationship. At first, it's all fireworks and all that good old. You got fireworks, your relationship with Big C, or is it just moonshine, you relax? Is it fireworks or relax, Big C? What's the best way to describe your first?
We have a fire pit, is what we have. And with that fire pit, we're able to put these skewers of meat over, so everything stays hot.
On BigCDate.com, we don't show up with flowers. We show up with some charcoal and some meat. You take your date on a meat date, Big C. That way you know if you like carnivores or not. But I think when you look at a team that starts out fast, and that's what Houston did last night, it's still hard for anyone. And I think the good old boys at TNT, maybe they weren't watching basketball throughout the whole season because they were saying, I can't believe that Houston got beat. Well, what have they been watching? Because a team that only has their one-dimensional, and again, who knows how it's going to be orchestrated to get to a Game 6 in this league. I think a lot of things are orchestrated in sports. TV makes no money with a 4-game sweep. It just doesn't. But if you've been watching one team run out of gas, one team had some fuel in the gas tank, and you've talked about that all year long, and I think what you've been saying, a lot of them good old boys on TV, they should follow Big C Sports more than sneaking around the dial and understand that you can't run the mile the way you run the 100-meter dash, and that's what Houston has to understand. I want to get your thoughts on 2 more players, Big C. What's your thought of Paul? Paul never had success against Golden State, didn't have success when he was at New Orleans, didn't have success when he was at the Clippers. Now, people have seen him in the playoffs. Like you said, playoffs are a different breed of cat. Hasn't had success in the playoffs against this team. Do you think the trade that they brought him over for to help get over on Golden State, do you think that they have a little bit of buyer's remorse because he spent more time joining with Durant than he did trying to play defense on a team that has the championship trophies already? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charles, I don't think they have buyer's remorse. You got to understand, this is the first time that he's been in this neighborhood. He's normally is out of the playoffs when he gets around to the conference finals. So, he's trying to establish himself after coming off that great Game 5 against Utah where he scored 40 points, a career high, and had double-digit assists, Charlton. He was thinking that he would just roll right in Game 1 and have that same type of success.
Yeah. Yep.
And that wasn't going to happen against Golden State.
No.
They have enough defensive personnel to offset that. You got to understand, Mitchell got hurt in that game also, so he basically missed the fourth quarter when Paul was on fire.
Yeah.
So you got a team right now, Charlton, that's very accustomed to being at home at this time of the season, is that the playoffs is their home.
Yes.
They've been there for the last 4 years. It's like, they're waiting on you to show up.
Yeah.
And then not being a hospitable host, even though they're playing in your house, this is their neighborhood, as far as their mind goes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so here it is with Paul. And you can see that the game was getting chippy.
Yeah.
You got Durant getting chippy. You got Green getting chippy. This is what these guys do.
Yeah.
When you're in playoff sports, there's a bit of a mindset that goes along with that, Charlton, where not only do you play at a high level, but you have to talk at a high level.
Yes.
You even saw Green being chippy with the officials, which he might want to pump his brakes on that in game two.
Too much.
But here it is, when you're telling a guy who's never been there what it's like, what to expect, and that it's not his time. He gets a little perturbed by that.
Yeah.
And so he wants to fire back. But he's firing back at the guy who lives there, not the guy who's visiting Charlton.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And so we learn a lot about who do you want, like who's on your team. And I want to bring up a thought about the MVP doesn't mean you score the most points. I look at what Steph Curry did last night. Steph Curry didn't have the best scoring game. You know, he scored 18 points. Didn't really shoot the ball that well. But I remember James Worthy back in the day. They were playing the Boston Celtics at the Forum in Inglewood. And it was a neck-and-neck game. And there was a play where James Worthy went for a steal, and he dove on the floor. And they got the ball, and they went on to score, and the crowd went nuts, Big C, at the Forum. And they went on to beat Boston. And I missed that chant, beat LA, that chant that Boston would have when they played at home. But it was that single play by Worthy, who was not the best player on the Lakers. He was one of the All-Stars, of course. Hall of Famer, yes, indeed. But we knew it was Magic and Kareem that ran that show. But Steph Curry did something last night on Harden. He didn't have his best offensive output, but he had a steal in the game. I think it was in the second half. And before going out of bounds, he did a backwards pass, and I believe he found Iguodala, who went and dunked the ball. Well, that's the same play that I've seen Harden give up on. Now, I know people want to say, well, nobody's being hard on Harden. It's just when you get used to seeing guys who play at a high level all the time, and they want to slide somebody in to be the MVP, you got to see the all-around game. And I thought what Steph Curry did last night was an MVP play. Not a lot of people talked about it, but when his teammates saw him having the effort, a guy that can drop 30 any night, wasn't dropping 30. But his defense was off the charts, even though Harden got some points on two. See that make any sense?
Well, Charlton, it was the intimidation factor. You got to look how hard Golden State pushed these guys physically. Not just in scoring, Charlton, but getting in their heads. I mean, extra body contact.
Yeah.
I mean, even when Draymond Green took the technical after Houston had scored, he didn't care.
No.
He pushed Harden away and said, hey, you're meaningless.
Yeah.
And Harden is thinking about that, is that this guy is getting up in my face. He's showing no respect.
Yep.
But they also know how tenacious a player that James Harden is. You saw the same thing with Paul's response to Durant.
Yes.
When you start serving up this intimidation as well as the wolf tickets that they put out there, Charlton,
yeah.
all you want to do is get them off kilter just a little bit in their game.
Yeah.
Get them out of their flow. Instead of Houston running up the court with the ball, they're sitting there jarring with Golden State. We know they've been a run team all year long.
Yeah.
But they slowed down to take the time out to jaw.
Yeah.
So you've gotten out of your game plan mentally.
Yeah.
That's what's hurting you right now.
I think that's a very good observation. Last two players I want to get on before we touch a little bit on King James and the land of vibranium over in Boston. Iguodala. Not only is he so valuable as a player, coming off the bench throughout most of the season, he's still a shutdown guy. Thompson's defense is amazing for Golden State. But I thought where Houston messed up is they didn't feed Capella. You know how we were talking about you got to feed the Lions, Big C? Well, Capella's the only guy, really, that can play the inside game. That Golden State has to respect that inside game because you're pulling players out on the perimeter with Paul and also Harden threatening to shoot a three. Who's getting rebounds? Nobody, because they keep shooting threes. If they design some play to go inside to the big boy, Capella, I think they would have a lot more success. Not only did he block Steph Curry's shot, he has range like Durant. He can play inside game. He's dominant. But they're not feeding him unless he has like 3 seconds left on the shot clock. And I think Houston has to make that adjustment. Big C, I wanna run over to the Eastern Conference, but I do want to say that sports is a billion-dollar industry, and boys and girls sports is a foundation to that billion-dollar industry. And for every athletic and sporting event, you need athletic and event insurance. We work with Ben and Mark. They've been around half a century. They work with Big C Sports. Whether you're a pro team, a collegiate team, a high school team, or even your mom and pop soccer leagues, when you reach out to them, let them know Big C sent you at 800-772-8624. That's 800-772-8624. I want to get your thoughts on this vibranium that people keep talking about. I hear that in the original Bible, in the Old Testament, they called it the Dead Scrolls. Not everybody knew what was in them, but I believe that only Jesus knew where the vibranium was. That's why he was really resurrected, Big C. After 3 days, he found he was eating that golden honey, and it woke him up, Big C. Is that why they're trying to hide it from the rest of the world, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, I mean, Boston is hidden a whole lot from the rest of the world all season long.
Yeah.
I mean, when you look at what they've done throughout the Eastern Conference playoffs, Charlton.
Yeah.
This is a team that everyone said, well, they've lost their 2 stars, and so without those guys, they're not going to go anywhere without Hayward and Irving.
Yeah.
But, I think Boston is a better team without those 2 players, Charlton.
They pass the ball.
And ironically, you're talking about 2 players that you could trade and get a lot for them. When you look at the young players, that they have all these high draft picks.
Yeah.
And you're a lot of salary cap room if you dump those 2 players. But if these players make it to the championship, Charlton, why would you keep those players around, Charlton, and upset the ebb and flow that you have already?
Yep.
I mean, when we look at Cleveland, the situation that they have right now, this reminds me of going to see a concert with Smokey Robinson and the Miracles.
Uh-oh.
You knew LeBron was going to be Smokey Robinson, that he was going to hit the notes in all the songs.
Yeah.
But you were going to need a miracle from the Miracles, the backup guys out there.
Yeah.
What can they bring to the plate?
Yeah.
Hopefully they were in step with their dance routine. And that's what you have tonight, is that you think about it, LeBron, Charlton, in the last 7 series that he's been in, the last 7 seasons, he's been down at least 1 game in a playoff series in the last 7 seasons.
Yeah.
Some series, 2 games, Charlton. And he's been fortunate enough back on many occasions. But this is a different horse right now that they're looking at. I mean, they were down to Indiana in that series, and they fought back to a tough 7-game win. They breezed through Toronto.
Yeah.
But when you look at Boston has been with Cleveland all season long, Charlton.
Yeah.
The mismatches that they have playing this team and the young legs that the Celtics possess, this is a real challenge. And so when you're sitting there, they have nobody that can play against Horford. If you bring in Thompson, he's a mismatch defensively, Charlton, because he can't play the guy.
Yeah.
And he can't score with him.
Yeah.
But when you look at the young guys, the Rozier, Tatum, Brown, Charlton, these guys are playing like veteran players, which they all are veterans at this point in the season. But you really can't recognize the lack of effort that these guys are putting forth.
No, I think that's a very good point. You also look at Jason Tatum. He's been a key for the Celtics to getting this far. And you think about these first-year guys. These guys, they don't know what they're supposed to be afraid of. I thought that Cleveland just played exhausted. Like I said, they didn't have the vibranium honey that a lot of them, especially LeBron, being held under 20 points, 15 points, I believe, in his first game against Boston. But it is about adjustments. And, we talked about that first game. Cleveland missed the first 14 3-point baskets. If you missed your first 3 3-point baskets, you need to have the players understand, we don't have it right now, let's go inside, and then kick it outside. Don't just come down and not even challenge the paint. I think Boston's defense was difficult to penetrate because they didn't try knocking on the door, Big C. You got to kick the door in sometime. And I remember Bum Phillips used to say, we knocked on the door for the Houston Oilers, and next time we're going to kick that SOB in, Big C. You got to try to get inside. And I think Houston, the same thing with Golden State. If they're not feeding Capella, then they may as well say, well, we'll have maybe 4 games and we'll go fishing. But that's the key. They got to have an inside game to open up their outside game. Harden just needs a little bit of room and he can shoot it. But if he doesn't share the ball, he's going to shoot his load. Again, your thoughts with Cleveland. Kevin Love has to show up. Yeah. Go ahead, C.
You got Smith. He's an outside shooter. You got Korver, who's an outside shooter.
Do you trust Smith, Big C? Do you trust him in the playoffs when it really counts, though, Big C?
Well, Charlton, he's been there. You know, you think about it. He's been in the finals 3 years running, and he's gotten a hot hand periodically.
Yeah.
Korver has not gotten a hot hand this year, Charlton. You got to look at this team was built to shoot the ball on the outside. They didn't build this team on penetration. When your biggest man is 6'11", Charlton, 6'10", and that's Thompson, and he's on the bench, how do you expect to have an inside game?
Yeah.
You know, you even look at Kevin Love. He's an outside shooter at 6'9". This is a three-point shooting team. You even look at LeBron. He now wants to pull up on the arc on a regular basis. He's their best interior player, but he was playing on the perimeter.
Yeah.
So he's going to have to take his game down inside. He's going to have to try to find some defensive fouls against Boston tonight, Charlton, because when you have streaky shooters, you know, and that's where they are. They're streaky shooters. If they're not hot, and all of a sudden, like you said, you missed the first 13, 14 three-point shots, Charlton, you're in such a hole that you can't dig yourself out of it.
Yeah.
There's no way you're going to get up to shooting 40% on the night after you've missed 13, 14 shots from the perimeter. Boston plays steady basketball. The young guys that they have will take what's given to them, Charlton. If going to the basket is given to them, if pulling up is given to them, you got to look. You know, when Horford is not on the court, you got Baines, who is maybe even a better offensive player than Horford is.
Yeah.
But he's not as athletic. So, you know, you play Horford. I mean, you can put Baines in against Thompson. You got an equal match. And you can bring Marcus Morris off the bench, Charlton. He has given critical points and minutes for Boston coming off the bench. You can't look across the way at Cleveland's bench and saying that you're getting that same repetition from them.
Yeah.
They made a trade prior to the All-Star game, Charlton. They brought in some fans to try to help out. And these guys are playing right now like fans.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Big C. So no matter what happens in the games, you know, it's just a fantastic NBA basketball. I'm telling you, I know Stern really got things going to make the game more marketable. And he brought in a class where guys are wearing suits on the sidelines, etc. And now it's a little bit relaxed, and you let some of that get away. But I think what we see now is the game is such a fantastic game. Really, when you get down to the Final Four, anybody can really win it. I think Golden State's obviously, you know, experience-wise is above everybody. But when you look at talent-wise, Houston just has to make some adjustments to try to get game two. And then if they get lucky to come out to Golden State, I still think it's going to be a 6-game series because adjustments and people make more money in the network industry when they have more than a sweep. They don't want to have sweeps in the NBA Eastern or Western Conference Finals. I want to get your thoughts on something that's just happened, you know, today, as far as news of buying the Carolina Panthers in the world of the NFL. Dave Tepper expected to buy the Carolina Panthers, $2.2 billion. Big C, that's $1 billion more than we're asking for GoFund Big C. I mean, so we know somebody got the money. If you can pay $2.2 billion for the Carolina Panthers, somebody can put in $3 billion to GoFund Big C. Just keep that in mind for all you billionaires out there in the sports universe. What are your thoughts about that, Big C? He's 5% minority owner in the Pittsburgh Steelers already. Now he's part of another major franchise in the NFL. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, he's a hedge fund owner, and Charlton, you know, he's worth over $11 billion, so this is just a drop in the bucket financially to him.
Yeah.
He's going to have to give up that 5% minority ownership of the Steelers, Charlton. But this is what we talk about in the good old boys club of the NFL, is that you keep those out that are not looking like you.
Yep.
You know, there was a minority group that had been put together, you know, led by P. Diddy. Oprah Winfrey was in there, I believe Jay-Z and a few others, Charlton, that they looked at trying to get ownership of this team. But as they say, you know, the rich keep getting richer.
Yeah.
And the thing about it, which makes it easy for the owners, they say, well, he doesn't have to go through the vetting process because he's already part of the ownership of the Pittsburgh Steelers. So that can be an excuse that they use, that it saves time for us, you know, finalizing this transaction.
That's cronyism.
That transaction of the NFL, you vet everybody regardless.
Yep.
But, you know, to find ways to keep minority ownership out of this exclusive club, Charlton, this is just another way of doing it. You're already, you know, in ownership of one club. But instead of expanding that to outsiders, Charlton, they keep it that tight niche.
Yes.
So, I mean, he says he's going to keep the club in Carolina, but really where else can you take them? Everybody who needs a franchise has a franchise, and half of those franchises have half full stadiums, Charlton.
Yeah.
So why move out of Carolina where, you know, they've had a steady following ever since the franchise inception back there, and they've even gone to a Super Bowl.
Yes.
They have a former MVP in the NFL in Cam Newton.
Yeah.
So it's a solid area for football. But, you know, this is a move that will help solidify the franchise. We saw some of the things that happened with the former owner, Charlton, with a lot of the allegations that were made against him.
Yeah.
But, you know, keep the fan base intact. Don't disappoint the fans. Don't move. And Carolina has a very solid base. It has one of the few minority coaches also in the NFL, and Ron Rivera.
Well, you just mentioned something for Carolina to stay put in that beautiful region of the country. Antithesis of what the Oakland Raiders are doing. The Oakland Raiders took everything you just said about fan loyalty, fan base, lineage, all your Hall of Famers that won championships on that dirt at the Coliseum, and instead of just moving to another part of California or the Bay Area, like the 49ers went south down to Santa Clara from San Francisco, they're going to Las Vegas, of all places. I hope Carolina doesn't do that. I think they've got more support than Oakland, but at the same time, it has a lot more, you know, resources in that area, and a lot of businesses have left Oakland. So, you know, congratulations, another cronyism buying another NFL team. And when you think about people like Oprah and P. Diddy, I'm so proud of the black diaspora, and not just lucky or wanting to be a fan that buys a ticket and sit in a seat. And people say, well, let's buy the luxury suite. Why would you buy a luxury suite of something you don't own? I never understood that. That's for corporate write-offs. That's not for some individual. Corporations buy luxury seats. And when you hear people trying to say, well, they want to put together luxury seats for individuals, it doesn't make any sense. That's for corporations. But I want to get this thought from you before we touch on one more thing. When you see, and this is something we talk about, you want the opportunity. And we say, well, everybody has an opportunity. But when Oprah Winfrey, who was a billionaire, with her money and influence, and all of the women that she could get to galvanize around maybe a team that's owned by a woman, to come in and at least make her a minority owner. If she can't get in, what's to give P. Diddy or Jay-Z or anybody else hope? Oprah's been more successful than all of them, and she's lasted the test of time. But it's still a good old boy network that Oprah and all her billions cannot crack. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, I think this move today closed the door on ever having a minority owner in the NFL other than Shad Khan, the owner in Jacksonville. And, you know, but to have an African-American ownership in the NFL, I don't think that will ever occur, just like we see players being ostracized from the league for taking a stance. I think that owners looked as if we allow an African-American owner in the NFL, now we've opened up Pandora's box where we can't keep players out that we want to keep out. Maybe they would sign them all.
Yeah.
And then where would that put us?
Yeah.
All of a sudden you're sitting there with a team that may be 90% African-American. That's something that they would want to see. I remember back in the days when the New York Knickerbockers had an all-black team. The Golden State Warriors had an all-black team. And the racial epithets that they had to take from doing that, Charlton, so they couldn't do that any longer. They had to disband it. And it wasn't because the players weren't any good. It was because of the media.
Yes.
The media led the cry against that. Just like you get the media that leads the cry against minority, ownership in any professional sport.
Yeah.
You know, you start looking and say, well, you know, this guy's background is not in sports. Tell me how many owners, other than Jerry Richardson, the shamed former owner of the Carolina Panthers, had a background in sports, Charlton.
Yeah.
You know, he was only owner to ever play in the NFL.
Yeah.
So when you sit there and say, well, he doesn't have a background in sports, just because you played some college sport doesn't mean you have a background in sports, Charlton. So when you look at these owners, they don't. And when you think about a hedge fund owner, he doesn't even know, he knows money, doesn't know jockstrap. Okay? Yeah. So he has $11 billion. He didn't make that from sweat. He made that from moving some commodities.
Yeah.
That's what he did.
Yeah.
So, but, you know, to say that they have expertise in the game, Charlton, they have expertise in finance.
Yeah.
But you hire people to handle the finance of a club. The owner is not sitting in there negotiating contracts unless you're Jerry Jones.
Yeah.
That's it. You know, your ego will drive you to do that. The rest of them have a system in place that everybody else handles strategic parts of the corporation.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, all you can do is keep trying. It's amazing, a league that's dominated by African Americans. They still are having a hard time even getting consideration. And this is for everybody that says, oh, everything's fair in the land of the free and home of the brave. The United States of America is a great country, greatest country in the history of the universe. And we know that it can be. But I still hope that people keep pushing, because ownership is everything. Back in the day, they had a joke called Knock Knock, Who's There? Jock who? Jockstrap. I heard a lot of teenage boys in the AAU telling that joke. But it's almost the same thing as the NFL and their owners, that oligarchy of power. When people are called and say, knock, knock, who's there? A minority trying to buy your team. And they laugh. They make it a joke. Like, oh, yeah, we'll look at your resume. And it goes like Gordon Gekko into the garbage can. And I just hope people keep pushing with that. I do want to bring up, I kind of feel for athletes, because you're told in order to fight pain, you got to get on some type of substance because they give it to you. Well, in Major League Baseball, Robinson Cano, he's suspended for 80 games of a 162-game regular season for failing an agreement that he had as a drug agreement. And I just wish, because you talk about it so many times, how many surgeons you've had, how many athletes you know who've been through the ringer. So a guy fails a substance test, and now he has to lose half his livelihood, when the league is pushing their agreed substance on players in the first place. Big C, how does that make any sense? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, it's an egregious thing when you think about it. He plays it with the Seattle Mariners, and in the state of Seattle, marijuana is legal.
Yep.
So by the state, it's legal. So that's one of the substances that he's getting banned for, Charlton. It's amazing. But when we think about the pharmaceuticals that all professional teams push on their players,
yep,
they turn you into a drug addict. But they say, well, it's legal because we're furnishing it to you.
Yeah.
Even though if you were to go out and you can buy it in any back alley in America, we see the opioid craze in America that's going on now, that
horrible.
Americans are falling over dead at a record pace, Charlton, from the abuse of this drug. Sports teams give it to their players. You think about that. Sports teams give opioids to their players and say, hey, take it with gusto.
Yeah.
But things that will help you, that won't destroy your internal organs, you can't take, because we can't monitor that, they say.
Yeah.
But even though it doesn't kill you and it doesn't make you violent, we don't want you taking those things.
No.
But when you have a dependency on these opioids, Charlton, that they're giving you, that's back to that control mechanism that these organizations have over professional athletes. It's not dumbing down. It's just a control mechanism.
Yeah.
As long as we can make you the guinea pig and you do as we say, you can play.
Yeah.
That's what happens in this game, Charlton. And I look at these opioids, and I wonder how long, Charlton, before these opioids trickle down to the high schools and Pop Warner League.
They already are. I mean, they already are, Big C, because a lot of the people who tragically overdose, a lot of them have been young people. And because they're looking for whatever is being pushed on. I'll never forget this, a very salient story. The first time I learned about steroids was playing sports in high school. And I happened to meet a lot of players from Florida who came out at the high school level, and they were already in, I'm not just naming the state Florida, but I'm just telling you what I'm saying came from athletes that happen to come from Florida. And we know Florida is one of the states, and of course it's rampant all over the country, but that's one of the states where the best talent is. When you look at guys that are fast, and sometimes the top high school programs, whether it's football especially, and then basketball and baseball, and especially track and field, they tend to come from out of the southern states. Maybe it's because of the atmosphere or the heat index. It's easier to run when the climate's warm and humid. But I'm just telling you, a lot of guys I knew, they were doing it at the high school level, and they learned about it when they were young. So I hope they can clean it up. And, it's a shame when a guy loses $11 million for taking something for whatever reason, and the league's pushing something. So as long as you take the pill they tell you to take, it's okay. I just want to get a little bit of thought before we get into a few things in baseball, Big C. The NHL, NHL is really having some great series right now. with Washington and Tampa, and then you have this beautiful team from Winnipeg and then Las Vegas. They're tied up 1 apiece. Washington is ahead 2-0. And I want to get your thoughts on bouncing back that Las Vegas has done to get even with the good old boys from Canada. Your thoughts, Big C, on Las Vegas?
Well, Charles, tonight, the stage is huge this time of the year. And when you're at Vegas, who has gotten as far as they've gotten in that opening game of the Western Conference Final, Charles, they may have been a little awestruck.
Yeah.
The Jets had never been that far either. But, they got down, and their goalie Fleury said, hey, we will not be down 0-2. And he delivered on that, Charles, and he held the Jets to just 1 goal. And Vegas was able to come out with a 3-1 victory and even this series up, Charlton. And now the series will go on the road, and this is an opportunity. I think the team that wins the next game, Charlton, is going to win the series.
Yeah.
But Vegas is such an electrifying organization. I mean, it's great to have Canada participating in the Stanley Cup, Charlton.
Yeah.
It should always be a Canadian team in the finals.
Yeah.
We haven't had a lot of that lately. But also, we're going to have something new this year. We're going to have a new Western Conference champion, Charlton, when you think about it. You're either going to have an expansion franchise, the first time in professional sports history, play for a championship, or you're going to have the smallest market in the NHL. And basically, Winnipeg is an expansion team just a couple of years old, moving back to Winnipeg, Charlton, participating for the first time in the Stanley Cup.
Yeah, I think that's incredible, too. And we need to have that. I wish they could seed it so that they would have the same way the NBA does, Eastern Conference, Western Conference, and they have teams from on your side of the country. There's no teams on the Pacific realm that are an Eastern Conference team. And I would love to see, I know maybe they would say it's anathema to hockey, but if they could keep, let's say, as many as possible, the Canadian teams playing in their own division or in their own conference. That way you could at least almost guarantee, maybe 75% guarantee, that a team from Canada could at least play for a Lord Stanley Cup. So I know they do this Western Conference, Eastern Conference. Maybe they could go the Canadian Conference and the American Conference. I mean, it's just a thought, because that team, the team that represents Canada right now, Winnipeg, it needs to be where at least most of that country could get in. I would hope that hockey would look at doing that. I don't think it'd be too much to ask. I just want to touch a little bit on the world of baseball. Baseball is such a phenomenal game, but everything's taking a back seat right now to the NBA, because NBA is right there where you can see the players, you know who your heroes are, and you can see them playing in 7-game series. Is so important in baseball. You're going to have some good action out there, and the top team right now happens to be one of the teams in the New York Yankees, with Stanton, and his batting average is right about 252. Last year he was down in Florida. Now he's up in New York. He's been booed, but he's also playing. He has that potential, and you can see it written all over him, Big C. Just give me your thoughts on the Yankees and the Boston. They're 1 and 2 as far as the power rankings. I think it's great when baseball has at least those top 2 Eastern Coast teams on top of the heap. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Falcon, when you look at Stanton, his batting average is rising. He was twirling down there around 200, at the beginning of the month. But he has caught fire. He has double-digit home runs now, Charlton. He is starting to deliver on what New York brought him in for, and when you're in this nip-and-tuck race with Boston for first place, both of these teams are expected to make the playoffs, Charlton, which would be great for baseball if they would end up in a final series, trying to get to the World Series. But, it's just dominant baseball. You're able to see the best players playing each other.
Yeah.
Boston, has really surprised everybody this year. They had a mediocre season last year, Charlton. And the Yankees, were in that series against Houston, who eventually won the World Series.
Yeah.
But when you added Stanton to the mix, here it is. You're looking at a team now, Charlton, that could easily set the major league record in home runs. You got Judge in the outfield, plus a great supporting cast on this entire Yankees lineup.
Yeah.
And the pitching has just been solid this year.
Yeah.
So the Yankees are delivering on all cylinders right now.
Well, I think about that last year's World Series champions. You look at the Houston Astros, Verlander with a 1.21 ERA, Cole 1.43, and Morton 2.03 ERA. They're 1, 2, and 3 in the American League in ERA leaders. I know they got hot last year, and Altuve obviously just that spark plug of a player for Houston. And again, they could win. They could at least challenge for the World Series, but it's hard to go back-to-back winning World Series. Houston, they had a meteoric rise last year. They were a team that was put together to win last year. This year is going to be tough to defend, but do you still think that they kind of strike fear into the hearts of anyone that they're playing in the world of Major League Baseball right now? Or they're atop of the AL West? Big C, your thoughts?
Yes, they do, Charlton. When you have that dominant pitching staff, you know that you can go down and shut out any great hitting team, Charlton. And when you talk about the ERA, which are sitting down there basically at snake level, they're beneath the curve. and so that's what you have. And that's what strikes fear in batters, Charlton, is that you have somebody whose stuff cannot be hit. I mean, I like the pitching staff in Houston. I like the pitching staff with the Washington Nationals, Charlton. These are two dominant pitching staffs. And the Yankees and the Red Sox pitchers have been exceptional this year, Charlton. Pitching is what you need in the latter part of the season. You'll see teams go out and make trades to bring in that extra pitcher, Charlton, in that playoff hunt. All of these teams have it right now.
Yeah, I tell you what, when you look at the National League, and you got to go down to about the 4th spot, the Arizona Diamondbacks, 24 wins, 3rd most in the majors, but they have the Major League Baseball worst team batting average at 225, Big C. And when you look at the Nationals, they're winners of 13 of the last 15, but they play the Yankees home and home. That should be a series that have a National League and the American League team. And Washington, they've come so close over the years. I still don't understand why they got rid of Dusty Baker a couple seasons ago. But this is a team that's always, they're just like, you know how those snakes nibble on something? You guys feed snakes rats? What do you guys feed them, Big C? Bacon or rats? What do you guys feed those snakes down south, Big C?
Well, we're talking, we try not to fuss with them. They can be finicky eaters. But, whatever they desire, we try to toss it out there.
Okay. Well, the Washington Nationals, they're always nibbling. They're like a child. You give a child some corn on the cob. They don't bite it. They nibble at it. They're always nibbling at success, but they haven't quite found it. Do you think this is the year they find it, or do they have to start rebuilding and get rid of some of those top salary players that they had just nibbling for a championship? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, the National League, there's really no favorite right now. I mean, you get teams that can get hot. When you look at it, the Dodgers have been beat up a little bit last year's World Series participant, Charlton. The Nationals are always there in the hunt. But this is a season, Charlton, that is going to come down to September to decide who's going to be the leader in that division.
Yeah.
Because it's early. And we see some clear-cut leaders in the American League, but right now the National League is still struggling for seeding.
Yeah, they really are. In fact, when you look at the division leaders right now in the National League, in the East Division, Atlanta, they're at the top of the heat, 25-15. Really love the way they're playing with that new stadium, followed by Philadelphia, New York, actually Washington, New York, and then Miami. In the Central Division, you have Milwaukee at 24-17. St. Louis, Pittsburgh, Chicago, and Cincinnati. In the West, Arizona, they're doing something that a lot of people thought it would be the Giants and Dodgers, but it's Arizona in the lead, followed by Colorado, San Francisco, Los Angeles, and San Diego. With the gorgeous stadium, they really have a hard time winning down in San Diego. In the American League, you look at Boston and New York, both with 28 wins at the top of that division, battling. In the Central Division, Cleveland, followed by Minnesota and Detroit, Kansas City, Chicago. In the West, you have Houston, again, last year's World Series champions at the top of the heat over the Los Angeles Angels, and then Detroit. I'm telling you, Seattle, Oakland, Texas, all those teams are going to compete as we get right into the summer, but right now they're all struggling. Big C, final thoughts of the day. I know we've seen a lot of good basketball in the first part of the basketball season in the playoffs. Love what Golden State's doing. I think Houston can make some adjustments. Boston obviously got out to a big start game 1. Game 2 might be a little bit tighter, but we know you got to wait it out. When the first team wins, that's just one game. The other team gets a chance to come back and get game 2. Big C, back in the day, there was a man by the name of Drew Bundini Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man. He would always tell Ali, with all you've got to use, how can you lose? Rumble, young man, rumble. Big C, What are you looking forward to in the sports universe?
We're talking tonight is the NBA draft lottery. We will find out which team has an opportunity, Charlton, to get the best player in the draft. And I think the Phoenix Suns have the greatest odds at 25% of winning the draft lottery.
Yeah.
And if they do, Charlton, I hope they hold on to the pick, take the kid out of University of Arizona, 8-time the center, a big 7'1" kid who reminds a lot of people of Joel Embiid with athleticism, Charlton. I think he can help turn that franchise around and at least double up the victories they had from last season.
Well, I tell you what, when you think it's butter and it's not, it's vibranium. And when you want to find out where to find vibranium, every Monday through Friday at 5 and 6 p.m. worldwide when you follow Big C Sports on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America, and Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. We always want to tell you, there's never, ever any excuse for domestic violence. If you know any man or woman going through that garbage, please call 911, because no man or woman should ever have to go through that garbage on their own. And as we always tell you on every Big C Sports show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.